The sea was a sheet of pewter, relentless in its quiet sweep against the jagged cliffs of Harrow Isle. Mist clung to the stones like breath, and the wind, when it rose, carried only the scent of brine and distant rain. It was the kind of place that asked you to remember what it felt like to be alone, the way an empty theater dusted in midway light feels when you sit in the dark and hear nothing but the tick of an old clock. Dr. Ilara Voss stood on the weather-worn dock, watching the tide pull the battered fishing boats back into the gloom. A wind-blown pamphlet fluttered at her boots, a yellowed, ink-stained page ripped from the back of an antiquarian's journal. It was an excerpt from the lost field notes of Professor Armand Kessler, an astrophysicist who vanished 50 years ago while researching the silent observatory, a domed structure perched atop the island's highest ridge, its copper dome catching the sun like a muted eye. Kessler's note spoke of a nightly beacon that lit without fail, a thin column of amber light slicing through the fog, yet every night the surrounding hamlet fell into a disquieting hush. No gulls cried, no waves crashed against the rocks, only the low hum of wind against stone, subdued to a whisper. Villagers claimed that those who walked up the path to the observatory never returned the same. Some said they heard nothing, others said they heard too much. Ilara felt the familiar tug of curiosity, the same that had driven her to map crater lakes on Europa and catalogue the bioluminescent moss of the Scythium jungles. She slipped the pamphlet into her pocket, turned to Malik, her research assistant, who was already tightening the straps on his backpack. "We have a week before the storm," Malik said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "If this place is as quiet as the legends claim, there won't be many locals willing to guide us." Ilara nodded, her mind already drafting a mental map of the route, the winding gravel road that clanged beneath tires, the ancient stone bridge that arced over a river of frothing whitewater, the half-collapsed gate that marked the entry to the old settlement. She could picture every stone, every muted shadow. The island, she reminded herself, was a living relic, its silence a curtain waiting to be drawn back. They set out at dawn. The sky was a bruised violet, the early sun leaking timid gold through thin clouds. As the motorbike rumbled over the cobbled path, the world seemed to mute itself. Birds that usually darted past in erratic flutters were absent, even the tires seemed to roll on a carpet of sound-absorbing moss hidden beneath the surface. When they reached the ruins of the hamlet, the aura was palpable. Houses, their wooden panes shattered, lay half-collapsed like empty shells. A lone kettle, long since burned out, rested on a hearth, its metal blackened by an unseen flame. The silence here was deeper, as if the stone itself listened. A wiry old man, his beard tangled like seaweed, emerged from behind a crumbling wall. His eyes were milky, yet sharp. "You're not the first to come looking for the observatory," he rasped, the sound oddly muffled, as though it had been filtered through damp cotton. "Don't climb the steps if you cherish your ears." The dome, she steel sound. Ilara felt a chill that wasn't caused by the wind. "What do you mean by steels?" He gestured to the far ridge, where a thin column of amber light drifted upward, steady as a sentinel. "Every night at 10, the beacon shines. Those who listen hear nothing but their own heartbeat. The dome does not just block sound, it devours it, drawing it in like a hungry tide." The old man's warning settled like a stone in her gut. Malik, ever pragmatic, scanned the surroundings. It could be a mechanical device, some sort of acoustic dampener. Perhaps a research station that failed. Or something older, the old man whispered. Something that fell from the sky. At noon the sun reached its apex, casting a harsh white glare on the craggy path. Ilara and Malik trudged the last half-mile, the sky widening to reveal a solitary dome perched like a crown on the cliff's edge. Its copper panels were darkened, a patina of green spreading across the surface, the beacon within pulsing a slow, patient light. When they stepped onto the stone platform at the dome's entrance, the air grew thicker, as though the atmosphere was being squeezed. Their footsteps reverberated in the void, a soft thud that seemed to be swallowed before it could echo. Ilara's breath came out in shallow wisps, each exhale forming a tiny veil of vapor that hung, unmoved, before dissipating into the dusk. Inside the dome, the interior was a vaulted chamber of raw stone, the walls unusual, raw, crystalline, humming faintly with a frequency too low for human ears. In the center lay a massive, oblong object, its surface smooth like polished obsidian, humming with a kaleidoscope of soft light that changed color in sync with the beacon's pulse. Malik approached cautiously, his hand reaching out, fingers trembling. As his fingertips brushed the object's side, an invisible wave washed over him, a sensation that was simultaneously a pressure and release. He gasped, barely audible, as if a small volume had been turned off and then back on again. Ilara stared, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the realization that this was no ordinary acoustic device. The object was alive in a way, it reacted, pulsed, seemed to breathe. It was absorbing the sound of the world, storing it within its crystal lattice. The silence that had suffocated the island for decades was now a physical weight, waiting to be lifted. She recalled Kessler's final note: if the observatory sings, we will be heard. If it remains mute, we are forgotten. A choice formed before her. She could leave the artifact untouched, preserving the island's eerie peace but condemning all who lived there to a life without sound. Or she could shatter it, release the captive echoes, and perhaps doom the world to a cascade of unfiltered noise, an apocalypse of clamor that could destabilize more than just an island. The decision hummed like a violin string pulled taut. She turned to Malik. His eyes reflected the pulsing light. We cannot let this continue. He nodded, but the uncertainty in his jaw was evident. Hammer? Elara searched the chamber. On a lower ledge lay a thick, rusted hammer, a relic of a maintenance crew perhaps. She lifted it, feeling the cold iron greet her palms. The weight was comforting, like a promise. She raised the hammer, and the object responded by emitting a low, resonant tone that vibrated through the stone floor, a sound that otherwise would have been swallowed by the dome. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the crystalline walls like an exhale. She struck. The impact sang, a bright, crystalline crack that shattered the dome's silence. Light fractured into shards, scattering across the chamber, and a vortex of sound burst forth. It was a harmonic chorus of voices, waves, and something else, an ancient, alien timbre that seemed to carry memories of star fields and forgotten worlds. For a moment, the world outside the dome was awash in an ocean of noise. The waterfall that had long been a muffled whisper roared, the gulls returned, screeching in triumphant chaos. The old man on the hill stood rigid, his frail form trembling as the sound swept over him like wine through a cathedral. Outside, the villagers emerged, heads tilted, mouths open, eyes wet with tears as the inexorable flood of sound washed over them. Some clutched at their ears, overwhelmed, others laughed, their faces lit with wonder, as the first melody they had heard in decades echoed in their souls. Elara stood at the threshold of the crater, hearing the world like never before. The hum of the universe pulsed through her, stars vibrating, distant galaxies singing lullabies of particle collisions. It was beautiful, terrifying, humbling. Yet within the chaos, a single strand of thought threaded itself. The object now lay in fragments, its crystal shards scattered across the stone floor. Within each fragment, a faint, pulsing glow remained, a tiny echo of the massive sound it once held. She realized the sound that had been sealed away was not just sound, it was information, data gathered over centuries, perhaps a message from an intelligence beyond Earth. The shards were now broadcasting fragments into the atmosphere, potentially reaching any ears willing enough to listen. The storm that the ship's captain had warned about rolled in, dark clouds swallowing the sky. As rain hammered the cliff, every droplet sang against the stone, a percussion of existence. Malik looked at her, eyes shining. We've given them back their voices. Elara smiled, but her gaze lingered on the shimmering shards. And perhaps, we've given the world a new story to hear. The island's silence would never return. In its place, a constant, layered symphony of past, present, and possible futures would drift on the wind. The name of Harrow Isle would become known not for its quiet, but for the day the world heard a voice from the stars, hidden deep within a forgotten observatory. As the rain subsided and a pale sun broke through the cloud cover, the beacon's amber light flickered one last time, now not a warning, but a beacon of hope. Elara and Malik began their descent, each step echoing with purpose, each breath a note in the newly sung chorus of a world that had finally learned to listen. Back aboard the research vessel, Elara recorded her findings, her voice steady, amplified by the very sound that once was kidnapped. The silent observatory was never silent by accident. It was a filter, a massive sound-absorbing mechanism, perhaps left by an alien civilization to shield itself, or perhaps a relic of our own forgetfulness. We have broken the filter, and now the universe will speak, if we dare to hear. The crew set a course for the mainland, their radios crackling with the orchestral background of wind, waves, and the low hum of the ocean's heart. In the distance, Harrow Isle faded into a silhouette against a sky painted in streaks of orange and mauve, still, but no longer void of sound. The story of the silent observatory would travel far, told in whispers and shouts alike, its mystery solved, its echo resonating through the ages for anyone willing to listen.